Are you searching for a deeper understanding of yourself and your place in the world? Do you yearn for more balance, more peace, and purpose in your life? Well, look no further than the Intuitive Revolution podcast, your trusted source for holistic insights and intuitive guidance. I'm your host, Alicia Farricielli, and I am ready to take you on a journey to inner peace and balanced well-being. Welcome back to the Intuitive Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Farricielli. Today, I have such a really cool topic. I think all my topics are cool, but today is like super cool. We're going to, again, pack Family Constellation Therapy. So thank you, Kat Daou, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Alicia. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So tell me, so this is such an interesting thing that you probably didn't just like, when you're like 5, say, hey, I want to do this. So how did you get into doing what you're doing now?
It's actually funny because I worked in the wine industry for like 6 years doing social media and hospitality before I got into what I'm doing. My family was in the wine industry for some time. And really the kind of the meat and the bones of my story with Family Constellation Therapy is that I was post-divorce at 27 years old. I thought that I had it all together. My life looked pretty cool. I was working with influencers, celebrities. I was traveling the world. I was doing what everyone thinks is so cool to do. And I would come home all the time and feel just as empty as I did when I wasn't spiritually fulfilled. Let's just say I wasn't spiritually fulfilled really at all. I had gone through ups and downs, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled in my life purpose. And I was really struggling with a lot of autoimmune and health issues, what I now know to be chronic illness and inflammation in my body, and was really just found myself at a crossroads of like, I can continue going down this path of doing the cool thing and like just navigating and managing and surviving, or I could open myself up to something different and see if there's another path here. And I was laying on my bed, and I think this is a really profound moment in my spiritual journey where I think my guides were just waiting for me to give them permission. But I was laying on my bed and I was like, if this is what it feels like at 27, I don't want to know what it feels like at 50. I need to figure out what I'm doing with my life. All of my pain can't be for nothing. That was like go time. That was like the line I feel like my guides were waiting for to like move forward. Within days, I went to go see my cousin and I said, listen, I'm hitting rock bottom again. I'm homesick for something. I don't know what I'm homesick for. I feel super unfulfilled and I like don't know what to do. I don't know if I can keep living like this. And I said, I need a life coach. She said, I don't have a life coach for you, but I know this woman named Carrie Gagne. She's a family constellation therapy facilitator, and she also does intuitive readings. And my cousin verbatim said, I don't like family constellation therapy. It weirds me out. It scares me. It's too intense. But I do readings with her. But you may want to just like see if there's something there for you. Don't Google it. Don't research it. Just book. So I booked 6 months coaching with this woman without even knowing what it was. I just knew in my body. I was so open to receiving any kind of support, and this met me like where I was. I met Carrie. I did 1 or 2 family constellations with her, and I was like, this is what I'm meant to do with my life. So much so that after the second family constellation therapy session I did, I was meditating. And in my meditation, I saw a tree, and I saw it represent me. I felt like there was like a synonymous meaning between me and the tree and family constellation therapy. And I felt like my roots were like growing into the earth in a really grounded way for the first time. And I was like, whoa, like, I think this is going to be bigger than I think it's going to be. And it has been. And it was just totally aligned.
That is so cool. I love we have such similarities in our stories, certain ways.
We do?
Well, yes. So I was in the event business for a while, which is probably similar to what you did for about 7 years. I loved it at first, and then I burnt myself out. I was like, there's something more. And so I was sitting there. I was a little older, like in my 30s, and I was like, there's something, I can't keep doing this anymore. So I went through a couple, another career, and then ended up finding my path with it too. So I totally feel into what you're going, like, I just got to stop. I got to do something different. And then signing up for something, and that just completely life changed you. So how I tell people how I got into coaching too was from doing what I'm intuitive coaching was from actually an intuitive coach that had no idea what I was like. Oh, that sounds cool. Yeah, we'll do some interview. I'm like, I'm a desperate at this point. We'll try anything. And so getting connected with that, it's like then you find your purpose. So I absolutely love that you did that. You went through that. So
thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it was It was one of those moments in life that you never forget. It's like it just is, it's soulically like it's like your compass turns and you're just like, all right. And it's crazy too, because part of that story, and it's interesting how it all ties together, is I was working for my family. I was working with my family. And then I found this thing that was basically showing me all the ways I was enmeshed with my family. And then I had to call my family and have the courage to say, this door opened for me, and I know it's not what you envisioned for me, but I really need to walk through it and see if there's anything there. And this is how I knew that there was something, I was being led by God, which I'm really into God right now. You know, ask me 2 years ago, I wasn't vibing with God, but I'm tight with God these days. But I really think it was just alignment. I got everyone's blessing. It happened so easy. I closed one door and opened another. And I was like, this is too easy. This is challenging. All of the survival, hustle, immigrate. My family's from Lebanon. They immigrated to the US. They had to live the American dream. Like, it was going against everything that my family story had been. That for the first 2 years I started doing this, I was like, it has to be harder. I need to make it harder. And now it's like, no, no, let's just find the flow here, you know?
Yeah, that's so crazy you say that, because it's like we get so conditioned into things have to be hard to be good. When in respect of it's kind of should be the opposite way. Things should flow into us. It should not have to be that difficult. Not to say you should have a hard times and we don't have to work and put forth effort, but it should not be this bump against the wall. We think when we're bumping against the wall, it's like we're gonna break that wall down eventually. We're gonna break it down, and then it's gonna be worth it. Then we get to the other side, it's like, man, all that work was not worth it.
And also, what are we trying to prove in that hustle? You know,
Yeah.
like, what is our story around the hustle? Are we trying to prove that we're good enough, or that we can make money, or that we can be worthwhile to be seen? Like, there's always some kind of weird story. And I was just talking to the same cousin. This is the cousin that we all did this. We do the spiritual stuff together. Same cousin who recommended FCT to me. I was talking to her the other day, and she said, there's a Buddhist quote that says, life is suffering. And I was like, I don't like that. And she's like, no. The point is that life is suffering. And also, where can you make room for God? Where can you make room for the flow? Where can you shift and change your narrative to find your flow, even if life is going to be suffering sometimes? And so there's always this kind of back and forth in my own story with that hustle narrative of okay, how much of this is lesson and growth and spiritual evolution? And how much of this am I making it harder for myself?
Yeah, and I find that we probably about 90%, most people are making it harder for themselves, and it's not.
1,000,000%.
I know, I'm one that has to learn. When I learn, it's the hard way. I'm trying to learn the easy way now, but it's always been the hard way. So.
Many of us have that story. I see that all the time with clients with Family Constellation Therapy. There's ways that I don't without getting into the nitty gritty of a session, there's pieces of paper that represent family members in a session with me, and you channel information from each paper, and we kind of play around with the family dynamics with the paper. I can't tell you how many times, I mean, I want to say 8 out of 10, I'm looking at the papers and how they're set up, and I'm looking at survival energy. It's just ingrained in us, societally, generationally, in so many ways of how our world is constructed, especially within the US. We are in this crazy survival energy. So, I think for me and my story with survival energy, it's just about shifting the story that, well, first it was becoming aware of what is the family story around survival. I have to work really hard to make things worthwhile. I need to be in front and get attention and be seen in order to feel that I'm good enough to succeed. There's just so many stories that I've had to be brutally honest with myself about, looking at the deepest parts of myself. And for so long, these stories were beating myself up. I was beating myself up. Catherine, you're a horrible person. How could you have a need to be seen? Or you're bad for this, or you're shame for this, or whatever it was. And then when I found FCT, or Family Constellation Therapy, it was like taking a step back and realizing that in spiritual and non-spiritual ways, the generational trauma of my family was literally the voice narrating inside of my head. And so the last 5 years has been navigating what's mine, what's not mine, what do I not want to repeat, and what do I want to repeat? Because I believe that for every challenge that we have with our family, there's always a gift, whether it's something that we receive from the family or whether it's a gift that we receive from healing from the family. So I'll give an example. I have endometriosis. It sucks. I faint, throw up. I got a concussion in February last year from fainting from period pain. It's been like the physical curse on my body is what I've always felt. And then in looking in family constellation therapy, looking at endometriosis through the lens of FCT, I started to realize that it was just emotional and energetic pain stuck in my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, and that in order for me to understand how I'm enmeshed with my grandmother, I have to look at the similarities of our stories. Why was I the only other person in my family who got endometriosis? I'm the oldest of 5 kids. Nobody else has endometriosis. My mom had 5 kids. Like, that's rare with someone with endometriosis. So I had to look at like that enmeshment, and I found gifts through going into it, right? But then there's gifts from my dad's side, and there's gifts, from in other ways that on that side of the family. This is just an example, but in my dad's side of the family, my grandfather was so wise. He would walk into a room and he would just exude this wise, grounded energy. And I always wanted to be like him like that. So I started to take on those same qualities. I would try to, at least, right? I wanted to like have wisdom or be philosophical. And that desire was a gift from him that didn't have to go through a challenge, but it's something that I really admired about him that I wanted to carry on into my own life. So these are the different ways that we can find gifts through the family system.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Because we look at our family, usually we have a lot of family trauma, which I do, my personal. We look at, we're like, oh, we want to look at the trauma portions of it. And we don't want to look at the good. And so I had something, I think a few months ago, where I sat down and I was like, what are the gifts that came from, particularly my father? Like, what are the good things that he gave me that came from that side of the family? Like, and there's so many good things that it really started to outweigh, the bad things, even though the heavy, but things were very bad things were, I say bad things that I didn't, the trauma was very heavy. It still had so many good, beautiful things to it. And I think a lot of times we don't really we want to look at the bad in people. It's so much easier because, we're kind of conditioned through society, television, for one thing. Like, we want to look and see everything that's bad in the world, the news. And so we don't start to look at the beautiful things that we were given because they're not, and they're really right in front of our face. We just don't pay attention to it.
That was so beautifully said. In family constellation therapy, my goal is to always encourage people to at least say, thank you for giving me life. The bare minimum, I'll share with you that moving through the mother wound with me was a slap across the face. I never thought I had a mother wound until my late 20s. And I was like, I'm sorry, my entire life is a mother wound? Like, what? Like, it was like, whoa. And for a long time, I couldn't find gifts in my mother wound. And I couldn't find that warmth, that love, that connection. I couldn't get there. I did a family constellation group thing online. And the facilitator said, if you can get to a place where you can just thank your mom for giving you life so your soul can be here to be in your purpose and that's it, then just do it. That changed everything for me because it was like, yeah, you did. You carried me in your belly for 9 months. That probably wasn't easy. You probably went through a lot of sacrifices and changes. And even though when I was born and our developmental relationship together wasn't the ideal relationship that maybe I wish I would have had, I thank you for your commitment to carrying me for 9 months. That's it. And for me, I was in a place to receive something like that. Many people aren't. It's a journey. It doesn't mean that you're not good enough if you're not there yet. It took me a long time to get there. But that's what we're working towards, is just thank you for giving me life. And then anything else that comes from that, bonus. But the gift of life is the ultimate gift when we're a soul looking to be in a human body for the purpose of evolution.
And you can take it further and be like, thank you for feeding me every single day when you're feeding yourself. Thank you for, all the things that you taking me, getting me, like, healthily out of your body, So we start to look at those little things and it's practicing those small gratitudes, which is big to me. I mean, that's a big gratitude, but at the time it can seem like a really small thing. So be able to practice those little small gratitudes, start to switch our perspectives to how we even really see the world.
I want to say this too, because I can feel this coming through. And I want to say, as a facilitator, my greatest responsibility is to have one foot in the physical, being trauma informed, and one foot in the spiritual, using intuition and energetics. I do mediumship as well because it can be really supportive for this work. There is no world where a facilitator of any kind, and I'm going to say the word should, and I don't like it, but I would say should be spiritually bypassing their clients, where there's a spiritual reason for something, but the trauma that you go through, it hurt, it sucked. You probably shouldn't have gone through it. Most of the time, it wasn't warranted. I'm going to take back my words. All the time, it wasn't warranted, right? Even if our soul signed up for it, there's no world in which spiritual bypassing is acceptable in my work. So I want to make sure that I make that clear, because when I was talking about the gift stuff, I could feel this little voice in my head saying, well, what about the spiritual bypassing? It's like, no. We can validate the trauma and we can say what your dad did, it wasn't correct, it wasn't right, it's not how you deserve to be treated. He could not meet you where you needed. There's no excuse for it. And can you find a place of freedom within yourself to a place of understanding, acceptance, and can you eventually, or are you willing to get to a place of compassion and forgiveness? Because compassion and forgiveness is not for them. I'll tell you, I have done a shit ton of work. I don't know if I can cuss on here.
Oh, cuss away. You're good.
I've done a shit ton of work on my family. There are people I forgive and I have freedom from it. And there are people I'm still learning to forgive for certain things. But when I forgave, it wasn't for them. It was for me. Because then I could be like, whoa, I don't have to hold on to this anymore. So I just wanted to say that because I don't like this whole spiritual bypassing thing. It just really creeps me out.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's a huge thing, because we see a lot of these huge, some of the most profound, most respected spiritual leaders are like, well, your soul chose to come down and do this. Yes or no, that it may have, but it didn't choose. It's still hurtful, and you're still allowed to feel the pain. Because if we don't process through the pains and process through the emotions, I mean, we all know what happens. If you're on my podcast, you've listened to enough episodes, you know what happened. And so we're still not, and you can't get to the place of forgiveness if you're bypassing it all.
We are souls choosing to be in these meat suits for a reason. There is a spiritual evolution that my soul looked down at my body and went, that would be really cool to help me grow for a reason. Right. So whether or not your soul chose it, people ask me that in readings and stuff, and I go,
doesn't matter really.
If it did or it didn't, you still went through it. It still happened, and you still need to do work through it. So let's assume that your soul is looking for the highest and best good in this situation. That means that we don't want your physical body and your mind carrying that trauma anymore, because then it frees your soul. Because your soul carries your human experiences. That's what past lives are.
Right.
So might as well do the work on your body now and do the somatic healing and do the nervous system work and get out in nature and ground yourself, because it benefits your soul, but you're still here for some kind of evolution. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, stuff happens all the time in our human experience. My brother-in-law, who was my age, he passed away unexpectedly in August. It was super traumatic. And I had this deep obsession almost with wanting to understand why. It wasn't his time. And I had a mentor of mine say, it doesn't matter if it was supposed to. It doesn't matter. It did. How are you going to move forward? And it was almost like a wake-up call of it did. It did. And now it's not about living in the past of, oh my God, obsessing. It's like, okay, I find acceptance. How do I move forward from this?
Yeah, that's amazing. Those were that exactly. You got to kind of summed up what I was about to say. Was that's, I think, to me, is the sure way to get to its acceptance is to not, we don't have to rationalize. I think our rational mind has to rationalize everything. We have to have a reason, an excuse. But when we start to just surrender and be like, this is just what happened, and it's my time to move forward. And what lessons did I learn from this? Because I'm a true believer in everything that happens, we need to have learned a lesson. And that's the reasons why. I think the reason why things do happen, because we're learning lessons through it. Now, doesn't mean that it was the way that was most intended, because circumstances do happen, but we do need to learn lessons from it. So if you learned a lesson, and that's the easiest way to give people and ourselves grace to, is through that process of just kind of releasing and letting go. We don't have to rationalize everything.
1,000,000%. Yeah. And analysis paralysis is a trauma response of some kind. It's what our brains do. It's survival energy. And it's what our brains do to live in a loop of trying to find validation in constantly living outside of our bodies and being invalidated in our feelings. It's also similar with the black and white thinking. Dr. Gabor Mate talks about the origination of black and white thinking. And it's a trauma response to an extreme environment where we have to categorize things in order for things to make sense, when life is actually just a lot of gray area, and we're all navigating that all the time. So analysis paralysis is also one of those things too. It's this deep response inside of us to make sense of what doesn't make sense. And sometimes in a family perspective, when there's analysis paralysis, it's chaos energy living in the family system. So similar to how we all have individual vibrations with things, certain traumas have vibrations, and war has a vibration, and certain abuses have a vibration, certain things, right? Even the intangible things that we can't see. So many times when there's chaos or analysis, trying to find analysis paralysis within the chaos, or OCD or control issues, if you want to understand the ancestral part of you that could be attached to that, then look at things like war trauma in the family. Because war creates an energy of chaos and grief and destruction. And in all of those experiences, we try to find control in our response to it. So if there's war energy in the family, also, especially if there's addiction or alcoholism in the family, look for war trauma. Because that vibration of what somebody in your family went through, it has a physical impact on our body. Bessel van der Kolk talks about this in The Body Keeps Score. We go through emotional experiences that we hold in our physical body. That's a lot of what autoimmune disease is too.
Absolutely.
So it's just things to think about. If there's analysis paralysis and someone's listening and they're like, oh, there's also addiction in my family. Oh, and my great-grandfather was in World War II. Explore his story. It's epigenetic. Our bodies are literally living proof that there's a trauma that happened.
Yeah. And it's like people think, well, I didn't experience that, or my grandfather was passed away before I was born, so I didn't get to know him. You still have the genetics lineage that's coming down. And it's so much science that's really cool coming out. You said of how our genes are changing. Like if you go through trauma, your genes change. Autoimmune, I call inherited, which is really fibromyalgia from my father, my grandmother, my aunt have it too, which is another autoimmune disease, which if not managed to control, which was brought upon by stress that was already in my body, but I had a very stressful situation go through, which completely ignited the whole thing 20-something years ago. And so, but I go back and looking through the lineage and looking through all the things that, went back through. It's like, it does not surprise me that came straight down to me because of the genetics and the conditioning and the just a lot of different things. It really doesn't surprise me. So I'm totally on board with what you said.
Well, and I think it's important to talk about something else that you brought up. It's that fibromyalgia, right? A part of who we are is ancestral, but it's not the whole part. It's a big part, right, but it's not the whole part. I was predisposed to endometriosis from my grandmother, but I got scarlet fever when I was 5 years old from something super random, who even knows, that then created a strep overgrowth in my body. And then I started getting strep throat every single year. Then I got strep B, then I got SIBO, and so it's not, my grandmother didn't give me scarlet fever and all of that, but the strep was aggravating the endometriosis in my body. And then here I am. I went through Western medicine. It all failed me. I'm now fully naturopath. You know what I mean? It's just, a lot of times people will come to me in an FCT and think that it's going to heal and fix everything. It can't. It doesn't. it would actually be devaluing you and your lineage to say that everything that we do in a session is going to fix and heal you overnight. There's too many parts to you as a person that need to, as you said, unanimously come together to kind of fit into this full holistic healing.
Yeah.
So,
and then you're able to kind of manage it. So, I mean, I don't think it's ever going to quite go away, but I'm able to manage the symptoms very easily because I'm able to. But a lot of it came when I started to heal a lot of the ancestral trauma that was inside of me. Now, that's all of my grandmother's passed away, and my aunt, it's all my dad, all of our families to start to heal that portion of it. That was a long lineage of a bunch of stuff. It's been revealed to me, but
there's always one lineage that's more impactful than the other, I feel.
But that's, to me, it's an exciting portion too, because then we can come in and we can start to heal those portions of ourselves, which starts to impact genetic every single thing energetic wise. So yeah. So
yeah, and that's why I say the ancestral part is a really big part, because it's not just emotional, it's also the epigenetic part.
Yeah.
It's what you're predisposed to. So I just had somebody come on my podcast today who, his name is Dr. David Billstrom, and he talks about women's autoimmune disease and how there's epigenetic components to it. And he was talking about a Harvard study that tested if meditation can flip your epigenetics. And they gave certain groups, meditations to do. And then there was a placebo group. And they found that with just 10 to 20 minutes of meditation, 3 to 4 times a week for 8 weeks, you can flip your epigenetics just with meditation alone. So imagine all the things you're doing to heal your fibromyalgia, plus just a little meditation. You're probably better off than you think you are.
Yeah. I mean, I'm to the point to where it's I don't have the pains that I had before. Sleeping is a whole different thing, but that's probably a multiple different,
Yeah, tell your spirit to stay in your body when you sleep.
So, that's a whole different thing. But yeah, I completely, totally believe that. Yeah, meditation is, I hope mentioned my jam, but meditation is so life-changing that people just don't want to, I don't know, acknowledge it sometimes. They're I can't meditate. I'm just close your eyes and sit and be still. You're still going to do your body some good. Just slow your nervous system down. Let's start with that.
Yeah. So, 1,000,000%. It's simple as it gets.
Yeah. So tell us a little more about family constellation theory. So people that are maybe a little confused or not confused, but they have questions about what exactly is it and how's the process that you take your clients through with it?
Yeah, my process is really simple. I like to move as slow as what's the term? What do you say? As fast as your slowest part? Yeah, as fast as your slowest part, because I think that with all healing, it's layers. And if we move too quickly, sometimes the nervous system can't handle kind of what's going on. But essentially, family constellation therapy is a way to look at how you might be enmeshed in certain patterns due to unhealed and unacknowledged family trauma. This could be emotional, this could be physical, it could be many different things, could be spiritual. I've put past lives in an FCT before, but it's not the first place I go. Family constellation therapy is also known as systemic constellation therapy. So I've put my business in a constellation before. And essentially what a constellation is for me and my work is I have pieces of paper that represent family members, chakras, themes, energies, emotions. We could really put anything in the field. But what we're trying to do is understand, let's just say you come to me with a block. I can't make money in my business. Okay, well, we go through the ancestral parts of it. We try to understand who's a part of this money story. Who are the people is there money trauma that we don't know about? Did somebody rob a bank and go to jail for it? And that's an energetic block within the family system. And now everyone has a weird relationship with money. Or maybe you were raised by immigrant parents and there was never enough money. And so you have that mentality. So we're kind of looking at all the pieces. Then I establish who are the main 3, 4 people or themes that are currently today in our session contributing to your money story. I have you grab 4 sheets of paper and all you do is put 1, 2, 3, and 4. You don't know as the client in the beginning what they represent. Only I do. And the reason I do that is to create a very non-biased, raw, and vulnerable experience of each paper. Because let's just say you have a personal issue with your mom when it comes to money. And you get on the paper and you know that it's mom. I'm not going to get you channeling the energy of the field we call the morphogenic field, which is the space that we open up. It's like a consciousness field that we work within. I'm not going to get mom's true experience when it comes to money when you're standing on her paper. So what you do as a client is you stand on each paper And all I ask you is, how do you feel emotionally and how do you feel physically? And whatever you say tells me a piece of the story. And as you go on each paper, I'm gathering more information from all these different perspectives on Alicia's money story. And so then you come off the paper and I tell you, Alicia, this is what happened. This is what I see. This is what the field showed us. And this is what your mom said about money. And maybe on the paper you said, man, my dad, he's always gone all the time. And oh, I don't know where he is. Well, maybe he went to jail for something with money. Like I'm just creating a false scenario, but you're starting to get information. So we're just looking at the dynamics around the money story and we just talk about it. That's kind of where the more therapy part comes in. We just kind of discuss, process the feelings of what came through on each paper. And at the end, we do my favorite part, which is the healing statements. And I channel healing statements and I put you in the front of your lineage because many times when we're dealing with trauma, you might be in the same line as your family. You may be behind your family. You may, who knows? We need to put you, if you were to look at a family tree, if you're all the way up here with great grandma, well, you need to be up here in the front where more gifts and stuff can come from you so you can move forward in your life. So we do that. We put you in front. We put everyone where they belong. And then we speak to each family member or we speak to the themes and we create healing and we create flow of energy so that now you are fully supported by your ancestors to move forward and make money and feel good about it and not carry these stories anymore. That is like the long way to describe what I do.
That is fascinating.
But that's what a session is.
That is fascinating. For listeners what was some, like one good thing you would want them to walk away with?
Around ancestral healing?
Around whatever. Yes. One for ancestral healing. If you have anything else, other good tidbits.
Okay, 2 things are coming through to share. The first thing is pay attention to your biggest fears. Those can be pathways to unlocking any fears that are happening and repeating from your family system. And the second thing that comes through is something that I learned in my journey with FCT. I feel that I can be an embodied truth of this. You are not stuck. You are not meant to keep surviving and struggling and being blocked. Your soul just hasn't had a chance to find alignment with your truth yet. And sometimes the ancestral parts are some of the first pieces we need to start moving so that you can find more flow. Because your loyalty to your family, for better or for worse, might be keeping you stuck. And you don't have to be loyal to them just to get love. You can move forward in your life and get a lot more support than you think.
That is awesome. That just gave me chills coming through. I love it. Yes. That was fantastic.
I'm glad.
So as we're wrapping up, for listeners who would like to book a session with you or book multiple sessions, I'm sure it's probably more than one session, as you mentioned before, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Right now, I'm taking a very much needed Instagram hiatus. I cannot even look at the app anymore right now. I'm exhausted. But you can go to my website, Kat Daou, DAOU.com. I've got a ton of stuff on there. I also have my own podcast called the Heal with Kat podcast.
Yeah, that's good.
I have a lot of guests on, and I talk a lot about ancestral healing and a lot of ancestral healing adjacent subjects. And then I'm on TikTok at Heal with Kat Pod. I can send you all the links for everything. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
All her information will be in the show notes. So go connect with her. I'm so fascinated by this. I'm super, got me all pumped up about ancestral healing and stuff.
I'm so glad.
I'm my mind's blown.
I'll add this too. I have a free cycle breaker quiz that I have on my website. Basically, my mentality with family trauma is I start with you and then your nuclear family and we go back from there. So we don't start in the back and come forward because you're the one that's blocked. So we might as well give you the freedom, right? But taking the cycle breaker quiz will tell you about your role in your family system and how you can use it to become a cycle breaker rather than staying stuck as a black sheep of your family just because you're, different. And there's the hyper independent, the parentified child, the caregiver, the comedian, and the rebel. So if you take it, you'll get a full free podcast episode of a breakdown of the role and how to navigate it and strengths and a spirit animal. So that might be fun for people to do too.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to go do that. That sounds amazing. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you, Kat, so much for coming on and sharing all your wisdom and your journey and being so open and vulnerable with us through all of it. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here.
I am so grateful. Thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to share. And great conversation, too.